Kerchesters is a 350 hectare beef and arable farm. We're tenants here on Roxburgh Estates, and the family's been here since 1928. We do integrate the arable and the beef, the two complement each other. The livestock system's running about 120 Aberdeen Angus cross suckler cows, and we finish the males entire on an intensive system, and heifers are retained or finished on the farm. Cropping is typically about 120 hectares of winter wheat, which is aimed at either distilling or seed. We grow about 80 hectares of spring malting barley, about 60 hectares of winter oilseed rape. Then there's about 30 hectares of temporary grass and around 30 hectares of permanent pasture. And the balance is made up of environmental in an EEC scheme, and we have weeder grazed grassland, species-rich grassland, grass margins and wild bird cover. The farms here are sort of loam-based. The north end of the farm is quite clay loam and the south end of the farm is more sandy loams. We kind of roughly classify it as half the farm could grow potatoes and the other half is just a bit too heavy for growing potatoes. The farm does lie pretty much north-facing, so it does tend to be a little bit colder in the springs and a little bit later to warm up, and could be a little bit later to harvest. For the last 10 years we've been grid sampling for pH on quarter-hectare blocks, so that's allowed us to target a slightly lower pH when we line. We're targeting a 6.3 pH, and this has allowed us to add more in the very low areas, and we've certainly put less lime on the areas that are above the target. We have seen an evening out on fields, and it's not unusual to see a range of 2 pHs within a field, and I think we're getting that down to maybe nearer 1 to 1.5 in the range. When we do that sampling, we're also taking sort of 10 hectare blocks of base analysis, and we've run that through an Albrecht analysis to see basically where our other macronutrient statuses are, and also to look at what micronutrients we are short in. So we bale all our straw on the farm, and it is used through the cattle enterprise, and we tend to apply our farmyard manure after oilseed rape. We don't grow any winter barley, so we have a fairly tight window to get our rape put in, which would be a more typical time to apply muck. So we spread the muck after the oilseed rape, and I think we definitely see a reduction in slugs from doing this. We find the top end of the farm in the lighter area is more potash hungry, so we tend to focus that muck up there if we can, or we will import organic matter in the form of either chicken manure or compost if we can get it and it's cost effective. We also finish cattle on slats, so we do have some slurry, which that tends to get applied before second wheats, just to sort of give them a bit of a boost in the autumn. As our base source of potash, the last 2 or 3 years we've been using a product called polysulfate and a sister product of that called Potash Plus, and we tend to target them on the lower potash status, which does tend to be the lighter land. We're targeting the more potash high fertilizer, potash dense fertilizer, and on the heavier land we're targeting the more sulfur dense fertilizer. So the polysulfate are a mined material that contains potash, sulfur, a bit of calcium and a bit of magnesium, and that's allowed us to tailor it within cropping, and then we can then follow up just with basic nitrogen products after that. When we looked at the soil analysis, our micronutrient status, we're certainly deficient in copper and zinc on the top end of the farm, so we've been applying foliar micronutrients. On the sort of the larger cations, we're short of calcium on some of the farm, more on the heavier ground, and we've been using calcium lime to hopefully counteract that. And on the lighter end of the farm, we are actually becoming slightly magnesium deficient, so we've occasionally used a bit of kieserite to try and counteract the deficiencies. So we've been trialling a little bit of cover cropping. We put some in last year. With it being established slightly later in the year than optimal, my theory was we would try and get utilisation out of it in the spring, a bit of spring growth. So we did get maybe 2 weeks of cattle grazing on some rye and some westerwolds. But unfortunately this year it's delayed the sowing of the barley, and I think on the little bits we did, the barley's just been really hit the dry spell, so it's been quite difficult to really see a financial benefit to that. We do use a bit of compost as well. Logistically, it's quite handy to have it at the top end of the farm because it's about 2 miles away from the farm steadings where we're mucking out. So it's a great way of bringing manure in up there. Our organic matters are, I think, okay, but could do better. We're sitting around between 2 and 3%. We're quite conscious of trying to maintain them or build them up through tillage practices, and I think that'll be a focus of the future anyway, how we try and improve them.